Hi students, and welcome to today's live IELTS class. My name is Adrian and I'm streaming to you from beautiful Victoria here on the west coast of Canada. I hope everybody is having a good weekend so far, staying healthy, staying productive. In this class, everyone, we are looking at a speaking part 2 cue card question in the speaking section. This is the part where you have to give a little 1 to 2 minute mini speech, and it's a very important little mini speech, and we're going to discuss on how you can get a band 9 for that little mini speech today. This is a members chat class. Welcome Angelo, hi Pawan, hi Sammy, hi Raghav. Welcome to our moderator Carolina. While we wait for a few more members, this lesson is presented to you by aehelp.com. For academic IELTS success, please check us out there. For the general IELTS, visit us at IELTShelp.com. That's generalieltshelp.com. On both of those websites, we've got lots and lots of information to help you prepare for your exam, and you can find some speaking partners on our websites as well to practice your English with. Our general IELTS website looks like this at gieltshelp.com with the green background. You can click that big red button to join our premium package. It's a one-time payment for lifetime access. We are an official British Council IELTS Test Registration Center and certified agents. And our academic IELTS website looks like this with the blue background. Again, you can click that big red button to join our premium package. It's a one-time payment for lifetime access. And when you go to your My Student account, after you sign up, you will find lots of resources, practice exams, and you will find this resource here, Student Partner Speaking. Click on that. As this is a speaking class, I'm showing you this resource. And then you will have other students on this page waiting for you to video chat. So check that out. That's for you to use for free. Okay, students. So, you can follow us on Instagram, IELTS_AEHelp or GIELTSHelp. And if you have questions, you can send me an email to Adrian at aehelp.com. And I saw a little bit of chatter between Pawan and Angelo at the beginning of the class. We get about 100 to 200 emails each day from students from around the world. So it might not necessarily be me that's replying to your email. As you can imagine, I have lots going on, and I have wonderful people helping me manage the company, including Carolina, who's in our chat today, moderating. And of course, I have other people such as Eldar and Mert, who help answer emails as well. So their word is as good as mine. So no worries there. All right. If you don't have it yet, get our app, Academic IELTS Help. It links to aehelp.com. Or if you're studying for the General IELTS, then get our app, General IELTS Help. It links to gieltshelp.com. Okay. All right. We have two classes today. This one, Speaking Part 2, and then we'll have Speaking Part 3 afterwards with a short 30-minute break. Speaking Part 2, Speaking Part 3, they're connected, so the content of these two classes will be connected. So hang around to get the most out of these classes. Okay? And then we'll have 3 days break as usual. So no class on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. That's regular. And then we'll have a full week of classes. So from the 30th, which is Wednesday, all the way to the 3rd. Pawan Eldar is my colleague. It's his email ID. It's not mine. Okay? All right. So let's get into speaking part 2. So speaking part 2 is the cue card. As many of you may or may not know, in the IELTS speaking section, in the 12 minutes that you're there with the examiner, the first 5 minutes they will be asking questions about you back and forth, getting to know you a little bit, who you are, what you do. And then after that 5 minutes, the examiner will stop you and they will say, okay, that is the end of part 1. Now we shall continue with part 2. For part 2, I am going to show you some questions. You will have 1 minute to read the questions, think about your answers. You can take notes in the 1 minute if you wish. There's some note paper in front of you. You have your own pen. They will ask you not to touch the card because of COVID protocols. And then they will say, okay, talk about an idea you had to improve a relationship. Your 1 minute preparation time begins now. Okay? And then your 1 minute preparation time begins, and you have to be very focused. You have to have very clear strategy. You have to use every second of that 60-second period to really maximize your response, your score, and your overall speaking score. Okay, so we're going to do that right now. All right. So in this case, what is your first step? So let's go through these strategies. And again, to do the best possible on part 2, you really just need to pace yourself, meaning 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So pace yourself just like when you're running a marathon. But here it's a 60-second marathon that's happening inside your head and on that piece of note paper. Okay, so what is the first step that you take when you are presented with these questions in front of you? And of course, because many students are quite nervous when they go into the IELTS speaking exam, it's really important that you practice these steps often so that even when you're nervous and anxious, your brain is just able to click and put forward the proper steps. Okay, so Sammy says, read the question carefully, identify the tense and the category. Yeah, and read that topic statement twice, right? So step 1 is read the topic statement twice and the questions carefully. Okay, now it sounds like, well, that's easy to do. Of course, I'm going to remember to do that. But still a lot of students forget, especially because the examiner reads the topic statement for you. So a lot of students, when they hear talk about an idea you had to improve a relationship, they listen to the examiner and then they don't really actually read the question themselves carefully after. So don't fall into that trap. Okay, so make sure to read it carefully twice. So talk about an idea you had to improve a relationship. You should say who it was with, what was the idea, when and why did you have this idea? Did it improve your relationship? If yes, how? Okay, so very good. And then who was it that jumped to question or step 2? Okay, so Sammy, yeah, so Sammy is on to step 2. Sammy, do separate these 2 steps. So Sammy says, okay, well, the other aspect here is to identify the category and the tense of these questions. And that's what you want to do now. So step 2, identify the category. Okay, and what is the category here? So what type of question is it? What type of information is the examiner looking for here. And Carolina says, yes, some examiners read it, some don't. And you're right, Carolina. You have to be careful. The examiners aren't always the same. The training, by the way, says that they should read it. Okay? So if they don't read it, they're not actually following their training. So their training asks them to introduce the topic statement to the question to the student or the candidate clearly. So the examiner should read it, but if they forget to do that for some reason, don't panic, okay? But their training does say for them to read it, so they should. So yeah, it's an idea, okay? And what's the tense? Okay, and we're talking about the primary tense of the question here. So, what is the primary tense of the question here? And it should be fairly simple to figure out. Talk about an idea you had to improve the relationship. And then look at the rest of the questions too. Who it was with, what was the idea, when and why did you have this idea, and did it improve your relationship? If yes, how? Okay, so what's the main focus of the tense here? Yeah, very good, Nick Hill, Sadesh. Yeah, it's past, past perfect. And another tense that you should be thinking about here is the progressive. This has been happening since my idea. We have been doing this since my idea. So you obviously want to include a fair bit of progressive here. Okay, so past, past perfect, present perfect, and the progressive tense. So these are kind of your primary tenses that you should be using in this response. Okay, very clearly. All right, now when we're talking about an idea, and I believe it was Ois who said what is needed here. First, yeah. So Ois says when you're talking about an idea, you should talk about the origin of the idea, the requirements for the idea, the results of the idea, and the improvement. Yeah. So when you're talking about an idea, you want to identify what is the idea. So the idea itself, the origin. So where did it come from? Why did you get this idea? Requirements. And this is a good one. This really helps your fluency and to create a lot of good content. So what is needed for your idea? The results of your idea. What are the outcomes? Okay. And improvements. So possible ways to make the idea or the situation even better. As long as you answer these points, there's a very good chance that you're going to answer most, if not all, of the questions on the card, and you're going to do really well. Okay, so what's step 3? So we've done all that. We're on a roll. We're sticking to strategy. We're getting rid of anxiety. Deepika says, what should the examiners read? I don't understand. Deepika, the examiner should read the topic statement of the card. So just one more time so that's clear for students. The examiner should say, so they're really trained in a very standard kind of way. And the standard says for the examiner to conduct part 2 by saying, talk about an idea you had to improve a relationship. Your 1 minute preparation time begins now. So before they say this, your 1 minute preparation time begins now, they should say, talk about an idea you had to improve a relationship. So they should read that topic statement for you clearly first, okay? All right, so Sammy, Carolina, Nick Hill says, find 2 to 3 ideas. Okay, Yeah, and that's what you want to do. You want to find 2 to 3 ideas, and I'm going to digress here, means go into a bit more detail with this. This is where I think students often have difficulty is coming up with ideas quickly and effectively. And you're right. The third step is think of 2 to 3 ideas that are original, lots of content, and easy to talk about. Okay, I'm going to help you a bit more here. So to do this well, think critically, think outside the box, okay, so broad. Think of specific examples and strongly consider the topic, okay? All right, and visualize. Okay, so you have to practice all of these. Now, here, we're talking about what? We're talking about an idea to improve what? Okay, so I'm going to guide you a little bit on thinking of these ideas, all right? So you have to come up with an idea that you had to improve what? So before you start, sometimes students are very quick to start thinking of the idea like, oh, this idea, that idea. But before we do that, what I want to do here is kind of lead you through a path of thinking so that you can be very effective with coming up with good ideas. So Carolina says, a relationship. Okay. All right. So before we think about the idea to improve a relationship, let's talk about what kind of relationships there are. So what are some common types of relationships? Okay, and be specific here. So what are common types of relationships that we have in our lives? Okay. So what are the most common types of connections that we make for most humans, regardless of ethnicity, nationality, religion, etc.? Okay, so June says relationships with family. June, I would break that down a little bit more. So family is broad. I would go parents, siblings, right? Maybe grandparents. Okay. And you'll start to get some better ideas. Of course, we have friends, yeah. And then we have colleagues. We have peers, classmates, yeah. Teachers. Okay. And then we have our partners, Carolina says. So partners could be boyfriend, husband, wife, depending, right? Okay, great. So if I were to get this question, this would be a key thought to have in the planning process, to think about these different types of relationships: parents, siblings, grandparents, friends, colleagues, peers, teachers, parents, okay? Partners, husband, wife, boy, girlfriend. Okay, good. All right. Now, think of some ideas to improve relationships with some of these different types of relationships, okay? So now I think visualizing this and thinking critically what, why, how, we can come up with some better ideas for improving certain relationships, okay? Okay, Janelle says, smoking completely ended my smoking habits. Okay, Janelle, careful. It has to be easy to talk about, okay? So quit smoking. Okay, that's maybe not so much an idea, but it's kind of a life change, okay? Pavan, very clever. I like Pavan's addition to the previous. So Pavan says, how about the neighbor? Also, yeah. Sometimes people can have bad relationships with their neighbors. All right. So, what kind of ideas might we have? And again, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So, think about activities that people do to improve their relationships. Okay. Sadesh says finding a common topic to talk about with a new colleague. That's too broad. Okay. So Sadesh says finding a common. Okay. Angelo says hobbies with my sister. Okay. Amanda says organizing travel for family. Okay. Be specific. Okay. So Amanda, I would say something like annual family vacation. Okay. All right. Carolina says romantic dinner. Okay, Carolina, if we go that direction, I would rather say something like date night. Okay. I'm not sure if anybody's heard of this collocation, but this is commonly used, right? So date night. Okay. In big companies, they often have certain types of events to create more teamwork and cohesion between colleagues and coworkers. Anybody know what that is? Okay. Again, students, the issue that I'm seeing with a lot of your choices, like Kush says, helping them in their trouble, or Sammy says going for a long drive with a cousin in depression, I think they're awkward. So keep in mind when you're thinking of these ideas that it has to be something that's original. It doesn't have to be unique. It just means original, that it's you, okay? Lots of content and easy to talk about. I'm seeing a lot of suggestions which do not meet those criteria, okay? Relationship with younger brother about helping him get rid of addiction to computer games. The idea is help him develop some better interests like outdoor sports. Okay, so June, you're visualizing, you're getting some ideas, but you need to be specific. So name a specific outdoor activity that you can do with your brother to help him break his video game addiction, which is making him isolated and lonely. So what would be that outdoor activity, June? So take that extra step and come up with the specific idea so you can talk about it very well, okay? So what is that, June? I'm waiting for that answer in the chat, okay? Okay, Raghav says a farewell party. Raghav, a farewell party for who and for what reason? Okay, Janelle says a fun day each week at the workplace. Okay, Janelle, the way that they say that sometimes is casual day. Okay, casual day, once a month at the office. So again, the big trick here, everyone, is that you do have to be able to use the correct English here, okay? We wouldn't say fun day at the office. You could, but it's a little bit unnatural. The more natural way to say it is casual day once a month at the office, okay? So annual family vacation, date night, casual day once a month at the office, okay? The original one that we have in our video that you can see with a student on our YouTube channel is family dinner time. Okay. All right. So June says badminton just came to mind. It's good for two people. Perhaps, June, what comes to my mind is... okay, So this is what I thought of, June. If I'm going to try to encourage my brother to break his habit of video games and get him outdoors, get him breathing some fresh air, I would probably plan to take my brother hiking twice a week rather than badminton. Why is that? What do you think, students? So June says play badminton. I would say hiking twice a week to get him to the outdoors for some fresh air. Why is that? So why would I go with hiking? What is the reason that I'm not going with something like tennis or badminton? What do you think? Okay, so again, this is why I said to you that when you're doing this, you want to think critically. It means you want to think quickly, you want to think outside the box, and you want to visualize the situation. Okay, so why go for a hike with my brother twice a week to improve our relationship instead of going to play badminton? Yeah, very good, Carolina. So Carolina says, well, you can talk while you're hiking. You can get into more conversation while you're hiking. Exactly. When you're playing badminton, you're doing an activity together, but it doesn't really let you get into a good discussion. Okay. Yes, Sadesh, same thing. So obviously, you're both visualizing the same as what I am. So Sadesh Somne says you can have conversations when you're hiking about what's going on in life, what's troubling you, sharing the joys and successes, the achievements. Okay. All right. So one of the common ones for the workplace. So again, thinking about all of these. Okay. So one of the ones for, so I could go for each one. So parents, I could do something like family dinner time. Siblings, we could do something like going for a hike twice a week. Grandparents, we could do annual family vacation or annual family party. Okay. For partners, boyfriend, husband, we could do date night. For colleagues, we could do casual day once a month at the office. Okay. So clearly, for the neighbor, what could we do? Okay, so if we're looking at each of these relationships separately, what could we do to improve our relationship with our neighbors? Can you give me a suggestion for that? Deepika, the idea is the activity. So the idea that you have is to do a certain type of activity. Ideas should be actionable. Okay, it's a good question. So Deepika is asking, why are we talking about activities rather than ideas? Okay, that's a good question. So when you are asked about an idea, this usually translates to a real world, actionable event, okay, that you can do. Now, of course, you will talk about the idea in your presentation, and you're going to see that very quickly, okay? Ois says, cut the grass in my neighborhood. Sammy says, inviting a neighbor for a dinner or Christmas party. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, but there is a cultural practice called a block party. Okay. Has anybody ever heard this collocation, block party? It usually happens a couple times a year, or at least once a year, where people who live on the same block, it means the same street, they come together, they have a barbecue, they play some games with each other, they have some conversations. So a block party. Or community cleanup, right? So getting together with neighbors to clean up the street and have some conversations while doing it. Okay, so, all right. Deepika says, can't it be like reducing anger or spreading positive vibes? That's your goal. So that's the goal of your activity. You can't simply just talk about that, Deepika, because you're going to not only run out of content, but it will be unclear what you're trying to say if you're focusing on just kind of thoughts like reducing stress or any other abstract idea, okay? It's very important that in part 2, when you're speaking to the examiner, you're giving what's called tangible ideas, okay? If you're speaking purely in the abstract, it's extremely difficult for your listener to make sense or make clear sense of what you're saying. Is everybody clear about that? Okay. Okay, this is a very important point in your speaking interview. Okay, you must speak about tangible ideas. If you stay abstract in your communication, you will have low coherence and your speaking score will go down. Is that clear, everyone, what that means? The word tangible means that it's visible, it's real world, it's something that we can picture, it's something that we can sympathize or empathize with. Abstract ideas are ideas that we cannot touch, we cannot really feel or see, okay? So when you say, oh, I have a friend who is just absolutely amazing, they're so kind, and we had this idea to make sure that we stay really positive in our day-to-day lives. Okay, I'm trying to picture it. All I see so far are just two happy faces. Haven't really gone anywhere with this, right? So you have to be really careful. Okay. So then we choose one of these and we take some notes. Okay. All right. So let's go with a block party. All right. Let's go with block party. Why not? It's a little bit about Western culture at the same time. So let's go block party. So build a better relationship with neighbors. Okay, I'm gonna have to move a little bit quicker because I've used a lot of time to explain these. Okay, so, all right. So let's build our notes. Okay. So the idea is a block party, which means to have a barbecue with all the neighbors on my street in June. Okay, we're in June right now. Okay, so I'm kind of starting us off here. So we have our notes. Of course, our notes should be very, very short. I'm just writing this so you have a clear idea. So block party June would be my notes. Okay, so block party June barbecue. Block party June barbecue with all my neighbors. Okay, that is the idea. Origin. Where did this idea come from? So give me a couple of notes here. So why did you have this idea to have a block party? Okay. Where did this idea come from? Pavan, a birthday party would not work because that's something that people do regularly anyway. So if you said you had an idea to have birthday parties, it's kind of like, really? Isn't that something that we do anyway to improve relationships? So that would be a little bit awkward, okay? But having block parties, which don't happen as often as they used to these days, hint, hint, that would be a good one. And what's the origin of your idea? So why would you decide to have a block party? Okay, Nick Hill, very good. So strengthen bonds after lockdown. There you go. Brilliant. Yeah, Nick Hill, very clever, quick thinking. And Nick Hill, that's the kind of thinking that really goes a long way because it's clear that you use some quick critical thinking there, right? So strengthen bonds after COVID lockdown. Yeah, so you kind of feel estranged from your neighbors. You feel like you haven't spent any quality time with them. Carolina, maybe new neighbors, right? Okay, you have some new neighbors. That's the origin of it, right? Very good. Okay. All right. So we have our origin. Now we need our requirements. So what do you need to make this block party happen? Okay. So nice and fast here, right? You know what kind of content has to be included. So you're moving very, very quickly. Okay. So ideas, the block party, origin to strengthen some bonds with some neighbors that you haven't really had the chance to hang out with after the COVID. You have some new neighbors that you want to meet. You want them to feel comfortable in your neighborhood or on the street when you walk past each other. What do you need for this party? Okay. Yeah, so Otis got the idea from a TV show. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Okay, so Sammy says we need some decorations, tables. You need a barbecue, games. You need a schedule, right? You need everybody to say, hey, yeah, I can make it on that day. That's going to work for me. So you need to schedule the event. The place is usually the street. So the street that you live on, right? Okay. Oh, it's very good. So hot dog, you need some music. Yeah, why not? Okay. Very good. Okay, so those are the requirements. Now, next is the outcomes. Okay, so you have this block party. It happened. Everybody got together. What are the outcomes? What happened as a result of this idea? Okay. Sadesh says no block party is complete without some karaoke. All right. Hopefully this will inspire some of you in certain parts of the world to have a block party, of course, once it's safe and people don't have COVID symptoms. But yeah, hopefully it'll inspire you to have this block party. Okay, and what are the outcomes? So what has resulted from having this block party? Okay, so Sammy says forming stronger relationships. Okay. Happier neighborhood. Yeah, absolutely, Paulo. Yeah, so happier neighbors. So happy vibes in the hood. Yeah. Nick Hill, maybe some new friends. You build a support network, right? Your car battery dies. You want to go to your neighbor to ask for their help to start your car. Now you're more confident. You know that they have jumper cables. They're willing to help. You know which neighbor is home. Okay. So you build trust and support. Okay. Among your neighbors. All right. That's very, very important in life. Okay. Maybe you build some new business contacts. Okay, so lots of great outcomes can happen there. Okay, all right. And improvements. How could you make your block party even better? Okay, so what do you think? What would be one idea? You don't have to go too far. What would be one way to make your block party even better? Okay, Ois, you're getting into details. We'll get into that in a bit. So how can I make this better? What could we do next year so that this block party goes off even better? Okay. Angelo says, have new relations, form new connections. Sadesh says, new prospects for business. Yeah, those are the results. Okay. Okay, so June says, maybe we can make it better with some icebreaker games. Yeah, to break the anxiety. So maybe having some icebreaker games at the beginning. Sure. All right. Janelle says, make it a theme party. Sure. Okay, I would say something simple like do it twice a year. So not just once. Okay, something like that. All right. And then my next step, this would be my step 5. Step 4 are my notes. Step 5 is come up with your first sentence before the 1 minute preparation time is up. Okay. So let's do that now. And when you're coming up with your first sentence, you always want to go back to the original card. So it says, talk about an idea you had to improve a relationship. Okay. You should say who it was with, what was the idea. Okay. And even though it's singular, a relationship, you could say a neighbor or you could say neighbors. I think it's fine. The examiner would accept that. Okay. So who it was with my neighbors, or it was specifically with one neighbor. You could gear it towards that as well. Okay. Paulo, step 4 was the notes. I just didn't emphasize that. Okay. So step 3 is thinking of 2-3 good ideas, and step 4 is the notes. Okay. Hopefully that'll be a little bit clear. Okay, Paulo, there. So that's step 4, the notes, the usable notes. Okay, and step 5 is to come up with your first sentence before the 1 minute preparation time is up. Okay, all right. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to come up with my first sentence here. All right, so I would start with something like this. A fantastic idea I came up with to improve the relations among my neighbors was to have a block party in early June of this summer. Okay. Sammy says, one of the most memorable ideas that I had to improve relationship with my neighbors was a block party last year in November. Okay. Yeah, in fact, last year we did have kind of like a COVID break, at least in Europe, when I was there in the summer when numbers were lower. So, it says, the notion I had in order to reform relationship with my neighbors in spring was a street block barbecue party. It was about a year ago. Very good. And again, it doesn't have to be the truth. So you could still say last year, and the examiner is not going to know because COVID has been kind of interesting too. We had highs and lows and lockdowns and no lockdowns. So it's fine if you're not going with this year, you're going with last year. That's totally okay. All right. Janelle says, well, a great idea I had to strengthen a relationship with my neighbors was organizing a block party last summer. Okay, June says, back in March 2016, I conceived a great idea for a better relationship among my neighbors in June, which was to host a block barbecue party on the street. Okay, good, June. Careful not to over speak, right? You're going to make mistakes. There's a little bit of awkwardness there with too many words, okay? All right, so a fantastic idea that I came up with to improve the relationship among my neighbors was to have a block party in early June of this summer. All right, good. So now I'm just going through these steps. I'm talking about the origin. I'm talking about the requirements. I'm using my notes. I'm using my visualization to complete this response, okay? So it really is just a step-by-step. And if you miss some of your points, don't worry about it because you can put them in after, okay? It's really important that you're not repeating yourself. You're giving new information. So here we go. Let's go through this step-by-step. I want you to write in the chat like you're speaking, okay? Try to be fluent. Don't overthink it. I'm going to type my response. You do the same, and then we will compare, okay? So at this point, the examiner says, okay, your 1 minute preparation time is up. Please begin speaking. And students, do make sure to speak and repeat. So when you hear me say the sentences, whether they're my own or from the chat, make sure to speak and repeat after me, okay? All right, so a fantastic idea that I came up with to improve the relations among my neighbors was to have a block party in early June of this summer. I came up with this idea, or if I want, I can use a past perfect here. I had come up with this idea because I realized that my neighbors became very estranged from each other due to the COVID lockdown over the past year. Also, 3 new neighbors had moved to our block during 2020, and they didn't know anyone on our street. I was watching a comedy movie called Block Party. It actually exists. And this sparked this idea. Okay, so moving along nice and smooth, I'm literally just using my notes here and expanding on it, okay? So I had come up with this idea because I realized that my neighbors became very estranged from each other due to the COVID lockdown over the past year. Also, 3 new neighbors had moved to our block during 2020, and they didn't know anyone on our street. I was watching a comedy movie called Block Party, and this sparked the idea. Okay. Paulo says, once I had an idea of getting together my neighbors for a barbecue party in my backyard because I really wanted to make sure that everybody felt more connected to each other. Paulo, watch your tenses, felt connected or feels connected if it's present general, okay? Oh, it says the notion that came to my mind, this notion came to my mind when I watched a BBC newscast and I saw many neighbors gathering on a British street. So I told my close neighbor Semerin this idea, and he told others in the neighborhood the next day. Very nice ideas, nice visual context. Okay, excellent. Sammy says the idea was to break the COVID lockdown. We had around 30 families and about 150 members in our community. We arranged some decorations and a small stage on a rooftop with some karaoke. Really nice. Again, Sammy, you're getting into the requirements, creating that visual content. That's brilliant. Okay. So in order to make my idea, notice how I keep coming back to this idea. So I keep mentioning the topic, that it's an idea, or the category. And in order to make my idea a reality, I needed to send notifications to my neighbors. I did this by printing out some flyers and putting them in mailboxes, and then following up with my neighbors a week later by knocking on some doors. Of course, for the event, I had to coordinate some food, games, and music to make sure that everyone would have a fun time. Okay? All right. So, in order to make my idea a reality, I needed to send notifications to my neighbors. I did this by printing out some flyers and putting them in mailboxes, and then following up with my neighbors a week later by knocking on some doors. Okay, again, very visual. So you print out flyers, hey, neighborhood block party, put them in their mailboxes, and then a week later, hey, did you guys get the flyer? What do you think? Can you come? Of course, for the event, I had to coordinate some food, games, and music to make sure that everyone would have fun. Fortunately, most of my neighbors were on board. And we had a fun-filled day in early June, strengthening old bonds, forming new relationships, and building a strong network of support and trust in our community. Okay, so now that I have all of those ideas, I can really move along nice and smoothly, okay? Using the vocabulary that you have. If you don't have all the vocabulary I'm putting up here, that's fine. Learn it and use, of course, the vocabulary that you know, right? So again, speak and repeat. Fortunately, most of my neighbors were on board, and we had a fun-filled day in early June, strengthening old bonds, forming new relationships, and building a strong network of support and trust in our community. Okay. I feel that this was truly a successful event. And in the future, I would suggest to my neighbors to have such a block party at least twice a year, in spring and late summer. Okay. All right, at this point, I want to check the card, make sure that I'm answering all of the questions, make sure that I haven't missed anything. Okay, and I see that a lot of you are writing some great sentences as well. So I am taking a peek up at the chat also, so I'm kind of running out of time. So that's why I'm racing to make sure that we get to finish this today. Okay, so talk about an idea that we had to improve a relationship. We're talking about improving relationships with neighbors, so that's good. Who it was with neighbors. What was the idea? The block party. When and why did you have this idea? Had it this year? Did it in June? Had this idea because of the new neighbors getting estranged? Did it improve the relationship? Yes, it did. If yes, how? By forming trust and support in the community. So now I've really answered all of the questions. So if I still have time, I would just simply expand on my response. I would talk about maybe forming some new business relationships, getting to meet the new neighbors, finding out where they came from, who they are. So getting into some more details around what I have already said. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Okay, let's go through this from the top, everyone. So again, speak and repeat. Here we go. The examiner says, okay, Adrian, your 1 minute preparation time is up. Please begin speaking. Right away. A fantastic idea that I came up with to improve the relations among my neighbors was to have a block party in early June of this summer. I had come up with this idea because I realized that my neighbors became very estranged from each other due to the COVID lockdown over the past year. Also, 3 new neighbors had moved to our block during 2020 and they didn't know anyone on our street. I was watching a comedy movie called Block Party, and this sparked the idea. In order to make my idea into a reality, I needed to send notifications to my neighbors. I did this by printing out some flyers and putting them in mailboxes, and then following up with my neighbors a week later by knocking on some doors. Of course, for the event, I had to coordinate some food, games, and music to make sure that everyone would have a fun time. Fortunately, most of my neighbors were on board and we had a fun-filled day in early June, strengthening old bonds, forming new relations, and building a strong network of support and trust in our community. I feel that this was truly a successful event, and in the future, I would suggest to my neighbors to have such a block party at least twice a year in the spring and late summer so that we can really feel comfortable knowing the people who live around us. Okay, Adrian, your 1 minute preparation time is up. We will now go on to part 3. And then we go on to part 3. Okay. All right. So, Sammy, Angelo, Sadesh, Ois, I do see some good writing there as well. It's fantastic. Again, practice this again at home. Record it. Listen back. Record your answers on your phone. Try it with one of the other ones today, tomorrow, when you have some more time to practice this. Think about these other ideas that we were thinking of. So, annual family vacation. Date night, casual day at the office, family dinner time. You can see an example of that on our YouTube channel with a candidate. Community cleanup, hiking twice a week with a sibling. Okay, so try it with some of those. Go through the same steps. Okay. All right. Okay, I'm glad you enjoyed that lesson, everyone. I will be back in 30 minutes. For speaking part 3. So we're going to have some questions following from this part 2. So hang around, okay? And for everybody that's watching, definitely check us out at aehelp.com for academic IELTS and gieltshelp.com for general IELTS. Join our premium courses there. You won't regret it. Okay, everyone, stick around. I'll be back in 30 minutes.